My name is Brandon and welcome to Gotta Play 'Em All, my series where I'm embarking on the arduous task of playing, reviewing and ranking every single Pokemon game ever released to find out which one was the very best like no one ever was. After playing through the Generation 1 main series games and a brief pit stop for the weird OG version of Pokemon Stadium, it's time to play the first true spin-off of the franchise. Younger fans might not realise it, but back in the 90s the Pokemon trading card game's popularity rivaled the popularity of the video games and the anime. Kids went crazy for these things, leading to some schools having to place a ban on bringing them to class. The cards first debuted in Japan in October of 1996, and the cards carried over to international markets as part of the Poke-Mania marketing push. I'm not sure whether it was the same in Japan, but to me it seemed like the TCG always struggled to serve its proper purpose. Of course, collecting the cards was an important aspect, but nobody my age seemed to actually play the game. I didn't have any friends who actually knew the rules of the TCG. This was in stark contrast to when the Yu-Gi-Oh wave came along, where it seemed like everyone knew how to play the game for the most part, thanks to the anime. To me, it feels like creating a video game version of the TCG was a way to try and get kids like me to learn the rules and get addicted to the game. Pokemon Trading Card Game was released in Japan on December 18, 1998, and on April 10, 2000 in North America. It could also be played on both the regular Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, casting the widest net possible. This video game adaptation was developed by Hudson Soft, who are one of the most veteran developers around. They have worked on a gajillion games, including Balloon Fight, Excitebike, Bomberman, and pretty much every Mario Party ever. Hudson Soft also developed the sequel to this game, Pokemon Card GB2 Here Comes Team GR. For some reason, this has never seen the light of day outside of Japan. Critically, the game has done pretty well. Nintendo Life reviewed the 3DS re-release and gave it an 8 out of 10, while back in the day IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, and GameSpot gave it a 7.6 out of 10. As I said, I was never a player of the TCG as a kid, so I'm excited to dive into this game and hopefully learn about this aspect of the Pokemon franchise. Once you boot up the Pokemon trading card game, you'll quickly develop a sense of deja vu, and for good reason too. This game and its sequel are the only spin-offs to use the exact same sprites as the main series games. Naturally, because of this, the game looks quite similar to Red, Blue and Yellow. However, I thought the game looked slightly worse. Obviously they're using the same sprites, so it looks close to identical. However, I thought the use of colour just seemed a little off. It sort of gave me the vibe of a fan-made game that clearly lacks the polish of the original developers. It's not horrendous, but I certainly much prefer the work we've seen in the main series so far. You might be wondering what the setup for a TCG-based video game is, especially if you've never played any game like this before. Well, it's mostly a unique spin on the typical main series game formula, except they've replaced Pokemon battling with TCG matches. Yes, this means you start off as a young kid who receives a deck of cards from a professor, battle a rival, and take on 8 gym leaders before taking on an Elite Four and a champion. In this game, gym leaders are replaced by club masters, with gyms being referred to as clubs. Just like the main series, club masters specialise in a type. Because the TCG is kinda weird and doesn't actually have all of the types in it, some clubs have to repeat types, which is a little annoying. The Grandmasters, who take the place of the Elite Four, also repeat typings. You might be thinking, wow, not only does this game look similar, but it seems like the basic plot is exactly the same too. And yeah, you'd be right for thinking that. Minus Team Rocket being present, this game is identical in structure to Red, Blue and Yellow. The sequel ends up introducing an evil team, so I'm assuming that game is basically the exact same experience as a main series game, just with cards swapped in for actual creatures. As for the narrative here, it barely exists. You literally just battle the Club Masters, occasionally battle your rival Roland, beat the Grandmasters, and then battle Roland who has become the champion. This whole setup was really bizarre to me. Like, taking the Pokemon world but then replacing the animals with a competitive card game just felt so weird to me. Not knowing how to actually play the TCG, I was a little apprehensive going into this game, but also optimistic that this would finally be the thing that teaches me how to play. So it came as a pretty big shock to find out that the tutorial here kind of sucks. The intro to the game is lightning quick, and before you know it, the game is just dumping slabs of text on you. Literally, the first thing you do here is read through dozens of pages of tutorial notes. For me, this was the absolute worst way to initiate me into the game. Far too much info is dumped on you at once. It's completely overwhelming. Things get slightly better when they hold your hand and walk you through a duel, but after that brief stop, you're thrust out into the world. I felt completely unequipped to actually start dueling people. As a result, my first half a dozen or so matches consisted of desperately thrashing about, trying not to drown in this sink or swim situation. Once I felt slightly competent, I headed out into the great big world of Pokemon Trading Card Game. Unlike the main series where you travel from town to town, here you have an overworld map where you click on which location you want to go to next. Most locations are just clubs, but there are a few other places to explore. Obviously, there's the location of the Grand Masters, but there's also Ishihara's house where you can trade cards, and the Challenge Hall where you can compete in the Challenge Cup to win better cards. So, I kind of understand the game now, so let's talk about my experiences with the actual gameplay here. I'm sorry to say that, for the most part, I really disliked my time with the TCG. Now, I want to say up front, I don't think this is a poorly made game. In fact, I think Hudson Soft did a good job, and I'll talk about that in more depth later. What I disliked was the actual trading card game itself. Personally, I think the Pokemon TCG is not much fun. Much of my frustration stems from the fact that this game is so heavily based on luck, to the point where matches will be won or lost in the first few turns purely because of a bad draw. This made actually getting accustomed to the game a nightmare. I was still trying to learn all of the ins and outs, but that was being interrupted by me winning matches in 5 seconds or losing matches in 5 seconds. I would estimate that the majority of my matches were over in a couple of minutes at most. So many times I would sweep an entire match with a single basic Pokemon, or the opponent would sweep me with one of their Pokemon. The game also can be a little tougher for newcomers because there is no reliable way to get better. Unlike the main series, there is no leveling up to make yourself stronger. Instead, you receive booster packs when you win a battle. For some reason, there's no card shop here. Every Yu-Gi-Oh game I've ever played features a card shop where you can specifically target things to make your deck better, but here, as far as I could tell, collecting cards was purely luck-based. At one point, I wanted to include Grass-type cards in my deck, but guess what? That was an impossible idea, because I'd only collected 4 Grass-type energy cards, meaning I wouldn't be able to attack with those Pokemon. Pulling cards is completely based on luck. I managed to pull all 3 of the legendary birds and Mew of all things, but was struggling to get basic energy cards. This kind of luck-based system is what makes collectible card games so lucrative, but in video game form, it just makes it frustrating. Getting back to the actual gameplay though. The fact that each club specializes in a specific type actually made this game ridiculously easy once I'd learned everything. Facing the Fire Club Master? Well, I guess I'll just pack my deck with types that specifically counter his Pokemon. This results in matches where I'm doing massive amounts of damage to their Pokemon, and even if they send out their strongest, fully evolved Pokemon, they're still doing a sliver of damage. I really don't think Hudson Soft thought this through. They were so busy emulating the main series game that this seems to have caught them off guard. The TCG is definitely not designed to be played with themed decks like this, especially when you know what the theme is in advance. It doesn't help that type resistance is ridiculously OP at times. If you get caught in an unfavourable matchup, you're basically guaranteed to do no damage to an opponent. I also hate how the TCG designates typing, resistances, and weaknesses. For whatever reason, the Pokemon TCG doesn't feature every type. This means certain Pokemon are given new typing. As somebody who's played the main series games for 20 plus years and has type matchups etched in his brain, this was a nightmare. For example, Muck is a grass type here. These changes can be extremely annoying in the middle of a match. The one that frustrated me the most was when I came up against Magmar, a fire type, which actually exists in this game. Magmar was using Flamethrower on my water type Pokemon, yet they weren't resisting it. It was still doing 50 damage and running through them with ease. In real life, it's a lot easier to see what the weakness is of a card your opponent played because it's right there. Because this is a video game, that process is 1,000 times more complicated. As I progressed through this game, I soon found myself becoming both extremely bored and extremely annoyed. The boring part came from being easily able to counter every club. I knew exactly what types they were going to bring, so I would just stack my deck and plow through them. I'm not joking when I say my easiest matches were against Club Masters, but because of the luck-based nature of this game, I'd often find myself being stuck on underlings. It creates this weird divide where it could be a struggle to get to the Club Master, but defeating them was a breeze. It just felt wrong. As there's no leveling here, Hudson Soft decided to allow you to challenge clubs in any order. This is pretty smart because depending on which deck you pick at the start and what cards you get via luck, you'll be better equipped to take on certain clubs at first. Outside of clubs, you'll also encounter Roland occasionally for rival battles. Roland uses a more balanced deck. Can you see how this would be a problem? You are never given a heads up about a Roland rival battle, meaning you'll have your deck fine-tuned for the club you were just at, but then face him and get steamrolled. The funniest part is, as far as I can tell, these rival battles are pointless. If you lose to him, the game just keeps on rolling. Maybe I missed out on booster packs, but everything just continues as normal. I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, that serves you right for not building a balanced deck. And look, you're not entirely wrong. My big issue is that this game rewards you for playing like that, so to have surprise battles like this is frustrating. If they had just allowed me to build a new deck for that match, I wouldn't have had a single issue with it. Maybe I was just bad at deck configuration, but if that was the case, a little guidance would have been nice. I was a brand new player here, so having some help along the way was necessary. It feels like there's absolutely no support when it comes to building a deck here. Circling back to the luck aspects of this game, I really need to touch on the coin flips here. A staple of TCGs is coin flips, which decide things like damage or whether an effect works or not. In real life, it's pretty hard to rig these coin flips. I couldn't find much evidence online to support my theory, but I am 100% convinced the coin flips are rigged, or at the very least, they aren't truly random. This was most evident when I faced the Psychic Club Master Murray. His Kangaskhan faced off against my Nidorino. Now, Kangaskhan has the move Comet Punch, which flips a coin 4 times, and every time the coin lands on the desired side, you do 20 damage for a maximum of 80. Guess how many times he flipped all 4 coins perfectly? Once? Twice? 3 times? Try every single fucking time he used Comet Punch. Every goddamn time. The worst part was that, in these matches, I was using a Nidoran, who also had a coin flip attack. Basically, if you get heads, you do 30 damage, if you get tails, you do nothing. How many times do you think I flipped tails? That's right, every time. If this is truly random, then I have literally the worst luck in the world. Alright, let's take a deep breath and talk about some different aspects. To spice up matches, attacks have little animations to accompany them. These become old very quickly, especially because most animations are just reused across many moves. I also thought the visual layout of matches was a little bit cluttered and actually made me feel claustrophobic at times. I'm not sure how they could have improved this on such a small screen though.
Hey guys.
Get out of here, you know how to play.
Introducing the Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy. You can learn all the secrets and strategies you'll need to become a true Pokemon Master Trainer, rated E for everyone.
Ha! A Thunder Punch combined with the paralyzing attack move makes Electabuzz arguably the best all-around Pokemon in the game.
Limited edition card inside. Gotta catch 'em all.
I'm going to be straight up honest with all of you. I did not finish Pokemon trading card game. I got through the Club Masters, but I just wasn't having fun with it and needed to put it down for my own sanity, especially because there's a sequel coming up. I actually don't think this game is badly made, like I mentioned at the start. In my experience, the actual video game parts were pretty well made, and by all reports, this is an extremely authentic and accurate recreation of the TCG. This game contains literally every card from the TCG's base set and Jungle and Fossil expansions. It also featured the first 14 tournament legal promo cards, and even introduced 18 brand new cards never before seen. This game seems like a completely perfect recreation of what the TCG was at this point in time. So when it comes to Hudson Soft's side of things, I think they did pretty well. There were a few frustrating elements that mostly popped up from them copying the main series so closely, but it's passable for the most part. It's the TCG itself that I have issues with. To me, it felt like it's 0% based on skill and 100% based on luck. Not once did I feel like I was outsmarting my opponents while winning, or vice versa. Personally, I think your game is fundamentally flawed if, because of a bad first draw, you're able to win a match in the first couple of turns. Games that actually get out of the first few turns often just hinge on coin flips, which is absolutely thrilling. There's just way too many luck elements at play here. It's not uncommon to duel someone and struggle against them 5 times, only to win immediately on the 6th attempt. I also think this game would have benefited from a greater pool of cards. A few hours in, I felt like I'd seen every card I could get from booster packs. Either there needed to be a greater pool of cards, or give me the opportunity to shop for them. For those that like the Pokemon TCG, I would recommend this view. But for those who don't like it or are looking to get their start, I'd probably tell you to go somewhere else. So with that said, it's time to rank Pokemon trading card game on our leaderboard. As you could probably tell from my thoughts throughout this video, this game is going towards the bottom. I've decided to slot it at number 3 on the leaderboard, just ahead of the original Pokemon Stadium. It was a close race, and if Stadium had included all the Pokemon, the TCG probably would be last. This means that our current leaderboard sits like this. At number 4, and in last place, is Pocket Monsters Stadium. At number 3 is Pokemon Trading Card Game. At number 2 is Pokemon Red and Blue. And still holding on to the title of best Pokemon game of all time is Pokemon Yellow. Next time, I'll be reviewing Pokemon Snap. This is a beloved game by many people who were playing video games in that era, and calls for a sequel to be made have been around for decades at this point. Will we have a new challenger for the crown? Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that Pokemon Snap review.